Now we're out here at Independence Oaks County Park in Clarkston, Michigan, and we're joined by our third session of Team Reptile Camp for the summer. It's actually the second session through Springfield Township Parks and Recreation. And we're out here to take a look around to see what kind of animals we can find. We usually, when we're out at this park, we usually find water snakes, lots of species of salamanders, sometimes a number of different frogs, and every once in a while we get lucky enough and find a turtle while we're out here too. One of the other things we like to do while we're out here is check out a creek that runs from Crooked Lake, which is where the boathouse and boat launch are located. And we like to check out this creek because it dries up in the summer when it gets hot and dry like this. And sometimes there's just little pockets of water, little puddles that are drying up quickly, and there's a number of fish that are trapped in those. And when I was a kid, we'd come out here, we'd find a lot of dead fish. Well, now with this group and with the camps throughout the summer, we come by, and when we find these little pockets, we try to rescue as many fish as we can and get them back here in Crooked Lake, which is really cool for us because we get to see the fish as well as know that we're rescuing them. So we're going to start hiking along the trail and see what we can find with these guys today. Our search for wildlife began with us exploring an area of the park where we often find northern water snakes. We hadn't been there very long before the camper spotted a water snake, and Taylor was able to catch it. She's, you know what, we won't hold her long because last week when we were here, 2 weeks ago, one regurgitated a mud puppy. You know how we talked about that? Because they get very stressed out. Well, that is definitely a female. You guys can tell because of the, I'm surprised it hasn't bit Taylor yet. It's definitely a female because, see how short the tail is on it? The tail starts at the vent down in here, right there. And I don't want her to get stressed. In fact, let's go ahead and put her down and we'll let her crawl for a minute. We'll just keep her from going toward the water. But I don't want her, oh, there she goes. I don't want her to get stressed because after last week when we had the one get really stressed and regurgitated the mud puppy, chances are she's pregnant. She looks like it. They give live birth. They don't actually lay eggs. They're just like the garter snakes and the ribbon snakes and that. They'll actually give live birth. She'll have a litter of probably anywhere from about 5 to about 40 or 50, especially as big as she is. She got the, no, her eyes are, I didn't know if her eyes were covered with the shed. That's all right. Let's let her, maybe put her up in the center there. She won't hurt you guys. Just no one go toward her, no one try to scare her. Even if she goes by your legs, she's not going to do anything to you. She'll just go right by you. Don't move though. Don't get scared and don't move. She'll stay away from you. Don't jump. Don't worry. She's not going to do anything to you. They're very used to people out here. Doesn't mean you should run around and pick them up because she will bite. What do you guys think they eat? Fish. This is Michigan's only snake that will dive. When they dive down, they'll actually dive and catch fish underwater, frogs underwater. Where ribbon snakes and garter snakes and that, if they take anything out of the water, they generally grab it, come up and eat. These guys will actually allow the water to help force the food down. We decided that we should probably take the water snake back where we found her and let her go. It's probably going to go right back over where it was. See that? See how it swims along the bottom rather than, like when we watch garter snakes and the ribbon, especially the ribbon snakes you guys have seen, they swim along the top. After we had released the snake and watched its behavior in the water for a while, we made our way over to another dock. The group started searching the sides for animals that might be swimming nearby, and within just a few minutes there, Taylor was able to make his second great catch of the day.
That's awesome.
It's huge.
Rich was going to be so upset he missed it.
Although I had missed this catch, I was really excited to check out this turtle since it's definitely one of my favorite species of Michigan animals.
Right into Taylor.
Really?
Yep.
His name is Grumpy Bob.
Oh, it's a Blanding
Grumpy
turtle.
Bob.
Yeah, it's a Blanding turtle. You got clawed a few times. What do you
He's scratching Taylor pretty good.
That's how snakes hit.
Figure out if it's male or female?
He's a male.
X-Man.
Well, this is what I used to catch out here. That's why I'm excited. Oh yeah, you guys are right. Definitely a male. Did you, I don't know if you guys thought about it, another way to tell it's a male on Blanding's turtle is the shell is actually more concave, which means to go in. On a female, it'll stick out some. Why do you think it would be in some on a male and out some on a female?
So they can hold babies.
Yeah,
Hold the babies is why it would be out more, right? And on the male, it doesn't matter as much, right? You don't need to hold any eggs, do you there, buddy? I've probably had you before. You're looking at me like I'm familiar. I'm really excited about this catch. One of the main reasons, well, for one thing, it's awesome that the camp kids got to see it because the Blanding's turtle is on Michigan's threatened species list, so there are not as many left. Some people find them quite often in their areas because there are very localized populations. There's still some strong ones in a few areas. However, there are not nearly as many as there used to be. And when I was a kid and I used to come out to Independence Oaks all the time, I would find Blanding's turtles all the time. And I would quite often find them on the road. In fact, I remember when my mom would be driving, myself, my brother and my sister, after swimming at the beach, would be driving down the road. And there was at least a dozen times where we'd stop and move Blanding's turtles off the road. When I used to come out here on the paddle boats and everything they rent, and the rowboats, and even on our own boat, Team Reptile boat, we'd always see them out here. It was great to see them. And I'm glad to know there's still a population here. I mean, granted, this is only one. Hopefully there's a few here. I haven't seen any in a couple of years, but I'm guessing because of the type of habitat, there's probably quite a few of them here in the park. This is a great catch though, you guys. I'm really impressed. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be over here when you guys were catching it because I was on the phone with the President of the United States, letting them know that we're doing our best to try to educate the public about Michigan wildlife. No, I wasn't really on the phone with the President. That'd be pretty cool though if President Bush wanted to talk to me about that. If you want to give me a call, President Bush, and talk to me about our education program with the public, I'd appreciate it. I'd talk to you, definitely. I think you're a cool guy. All right.
Can we see how fast he goes on land?
Yes, they are. They're actually, what it means to be on the Michigan Threatened Species List means that they're not endangered yet. That's a great question, David. It means they're not endangered yet. There's still a decent amount. But what it means to be threatened is it means that there's not a sustainable population, which means that there's not enough of these to keep having babies, that we're going to keep having a population that grows. In other words, the numbers are going to keep dropping and dropping. One of the main reasons that we're losing the turtles is because of the number of roads we have. There's actually more Blanding's turtles killed on the road because they're semi-terrestrial. They tend to go up on land more than any other turtle in Michigan, except for perhaps the wood turtle, which is a more northern turtle, and then the box turtle, which both of those turtles are on the threatened species list also, and it's because of the loss of habitat. They're easy to tell the difference between this and a painted turtle, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to tell. What's that?
Can you tell what mood he's in?
What mood he's in?
Happy.
He looks happy because he's smiling, yep. You know, that's funny that you mentioned that
Turtles
because,
always smile even when they're sad.
well, especially Blanding's turtles, the way their jaw structure is, and it's hard for me to point it out without him sticking his head in, but the way their jaw structure is, it makes it look like they have a permanent smile. And that's one of the reasons I've always liked Blanding's turtles, because they always look so happy to me.
That's what my guy
Doesn't mean they're happy.
But they're actually.
Would you be happy if you were being held up in the air like this and kind of moved around?
No, I think he's pretty mad.
I don't know if he's mad, but
I think he is.
now I've got a real good question for you guys. Can I keep this turtle?
No.
Yeah.
Why not?
Because it's on the threatened list.
We
There's a better chance to mate.
It's on, right? Yeah. If I take this turtle out, what happens? Say there's only 4 turtles here, and 2 of them are males and 2 are females.
Then you
Take one out, then it will be of less eggs.
Yeah, that means less eggs. That means, right? Yeah, less turtles, and yeah, it's very dangerous for me to, or it's very dangerous for the population for me to take this turtle out. And because it's on the Michigan Threatened Species List, that means there's a law against me keeping this turtle. So, should we even be holding on to it this long? No. Probably not. We should probably let it go right now, shouldn't we? We let the Blanding's turtle go and then made our way down one of the trails toward the creek. Just as we had expected, this area of the Clinton River had dried up, leaving only a couple very small puddles of water. We traveled back a ways along the dried up riverbed until we came to a couple pockets of water.
What did they catch?
Although we weren't able to rescue many animals this time, we did take a small dogfish, a small bullhead catfish, and a little crayfish back to Crooked Lake and let them go. On our way back up to the main trail, Zach and Taylor found a couple of salamanders and then brought them up for the rest of the group to see.
Two redbacks and a leadback.
Well, let me ask you guys a couple questions. Are these two different species or one species?
One species.
And what species is it?
The redback.
Redback salamander, very good. And do they have lungs or do they breathe through their skin?
They breathe through their skin.
Breathe through their skin. They
No
have no lungs.
lungs.
Do they start, here's a good question. Do they start in the water or start on land?
On land, because they can't breathe
They
in
start on
water.
land, yeah, they never,
They'd suffocate.
don't let it jump. So do they ever have gills? Once they're born, do they ever have gills? Generally no. Every once in a while they might have a tiny bit left of what's called a gill bud. They might have a tiny bit left of what's called a gill bud when they first hatch from the eggs, but it disappears right away. So they actually have gills while they're in the egg. So they go through their larval stage in the egg rather than in the water. Why do you think there's more redback salamanders anymore than there are any other type? Aaron?
Because they don't start out in the water and salamander larvae that does start in the water can get eaten by fish.
Yeah, salamander larva that starts in the water, that's very good. Yeah, there's a lot more predators in the water. So when they're on the land, the Porta-John door slammed. When they're on the land, there's a better chance that they're going to survive because there's not as many predators that'll dig up the little salamander eggs. So, and they don't have to worry about finding the pond, right? I mean, what if all your ponds dried up? The salamanders can't reproduce, right? Except for redbacks who can lay it on land. That's another big important factor. All right, we ready? After Taylor and Zach had let the three leadbacks go, we started making our way out to a place that we call Salamander Hill. As we walked along, I started thinking about a conversation that I had earlier in the morning with some of the counselors. We had talked about how lucky we were in this camp to have someone who voluntarily does something each day with little to no recognition. Up to this point, this person had just been an unsung hero of our Team Reptile camp, but I was about to change that. Johnny, folks at home. Folks at home, Johnny. The reason I'm introducing Johnny himself personally, where I don't necessarily always introduce all of our Team Reptile camp members, is because Johnny is Bucket Boy. And I was just talking to Taylor about it this morning, I've talked with other counselors about it. No one ever wants to carry the buckets. We've always had a problem with that with camps. Bucket gets left behind. Well, not this year. And even last year, he took on this responsibility, and this year he's grown with it. Bucket Boy has become the bucket master. He always carries the buckets. He makes sure we have them. He makes sure that the animals are in them safely if we need to transport any animals. He's been great, and I just want to make sure that he gets his recognition. If I had an award for you, which I don't right now, I could make one out of leaves. That's kind of shaped like a bucket. I'd like to present Johnny with Bucket Master of 2005. Johnny, you might not want to lose that because that's, if I could get it engraved, I would, but I don't have a pen on it. So sorry. But anyways, he's done a great job for us. We really appreciate it. Nice work. All right. Go be the Bucket Master. See you later. Johnny and the other campers searched Salamander Hill for a while and found a few salamanders, including a redback salamander that was missing part of its tail. We got a redback. Nice job, Shannon. Shannon found a redback. An unusual looking one because of its tail. Not too long after we had found this redback salamander, Zach and David found another one that was hiding under some leaf litter. This redback salamander, which is referred to as a leadback because of its lack of red coloration, was the last salamander we found on Salamander Hill that
Tickles
day.
when they go up like that, doesn't it?
One time, one of them climbed up through my shirt sleeve. Now he's going up.
Oh.
Although we weren't finding many different species of salamanders on Salamander Hill today, our luck with finding some different frog species was actually going pretty well. By the time we had finished exploring Salamander Hill today, we had found some spring peepers, wood frogs, a leopard frog, and even an American toad. We had had some great camp adventures here at Independence Oaks, but it was time to call it a day.
There's one little bite, it'd kill me, but I'm going to go ahead and let it crawl over my head.
We made our way out of the woods and headed back towards our camp meeting place. Although it was our last day with this group, we knew we had another exciting camp session starting up soon. We're now with Springfield Township Parks and Recreation, Team Reptile Camp number 3, and we're at the Shiawassee Basin Preserves here in Springfield. to check out the ponds here where we usually have a lot of luck finding different species of frogs, tadpoles, sometimes even turtles, and also sometimes some different snakes like water snakes, ribbon snakes, and garter snake. We're gonna check it out and see what we find today. Ready, you guys? Yeah! One of our goals today was to find some animals that we could use for our Oakland County 4-H fair display that was only 2 days away. We explored the edge of the front pond for a little while and even took turns scooping down in the water to see what we could find. Because a lot of different critters like to hide out in the aquatic vegetation, we often scoop some of it up and then carefully search through it for an animal.
Pick through and see if you find anything.
We also stress to the campers how important it is to put everything we take out of the pond back in once we've searched through it. Our first find today was a small crayfish that Christian had found crawling in the weeds he had pulled up.
Do you want to keep it or let it go? We'll let it go. Okay.
Since we really only needed one crayfish for the upcoming exhibit, Christian had chosen to let this one go in hopes that we may end up finding a larger one. Not too long after we let this little crayfish go, Zach ended up catching a much larger crayfish that we did end up keeping for our 4-H exhibit.
I was going for a frog, but I caught a crayfish.
Gigantic. Right, he did break off the leg.
While Zach and some of the other campers were busy checking out the big crayfish, Taylor was exploring around some bushes close to the shore where he discovered a praying mantis that was crawling on one of the branches. This large species of insect was actually introduced to North America during the early 1900s. Their long front legs have sharp spines on them which they use to capture and hold prey, including many garden and crop damaging insects. Oh yeah, and the larger females of the species also tend to eat the smaller males after ripping off their head. Our next discovery was much less cannibalistic. Amanda, Amy, and a few of the campers found what they believed to possibly be a pickerel frog, judging by its
Make sure you don't let
appearance.
him drop, okay? Isn't that a pickerel frog, Amy? Well, I'm not positive. I think I was asking Rich, and I think he said if it has gold stripes, it is, and if it doesn't, it's a leopard frog. No,
Yeah, because it doesn't look like a leopard.
No, but I think it might be a pickerel frog, actually.
Very cool. Rich
Make
wants
sure you
that.
don't lose
Where's the
that one.
bucket, guys?
Since they weren't sure exactly
Go
what
ahead and
species of
put it
frog
back
this
in the net
was,
and
they
then-
decided they would hold on to it until I could get a chance to look at it. Not long after that, the group caught another frog that resembled a pickerel frog, and then they brought both of them over for me to check them out. Although these frogs right here that everybody just caught really look like pickerel frogs, even when I first looked at them, looked like pickerel frogs because the dorsolateral ridge was a lighter color. They have more of the tan color, which is a normal characteristic of a pickerel frog. Pickerel frogs normally have 2 rows of rectangular spots on their back. These leopard frogs here, the spots are round and there's about 3 rows on the back. So they're definitely leopard frogs, although coloration wise, when I first saw them I thought, oh cool, they got pickerel frogs. But coloration wise, they look like pickerel, but they're definitely leopard frogs. We now had a couple of northern leopard frogs for the 4-H fair, and within a short time the group found another species of frog that we could also add to our upcoming display.
I think it's a female.
Yeah, that is a female.
Do you remember how you know it's a green frog and not a bullfrog?
The dorsolateral ridges right there.
And it's a female because of the tympanums.
As Zach continued to check out the big green frog, Max went over and scooped up the species of frog that we had just been comparing this frog to.
This is a little female bullfrog. You can tell it's a female. And the size of the circles behind its ears, they're called the tympanums. You can tell it's a bullfrog because it doesn't have any dorsolateral ridges or bumps on its back. And by the bright green coloration on it.
We were definitely having great luck today finding some different species of frogs, but so far we hadn't found any reptiles. I was pretty confident, however, judging from our past experiences at these ponds, that it wouldn't be too long before we changed that.
We got a turtle.
And turtle.
Painted. Female.
And how do you know it's a painted turtle?
Because of the red markings on the side of the neck. And it's a female too.
And how do you know that?
Because if the vent is past the shell, it's a male, but if it's inside of the shell, then it's a female.
Since we already had a couple painted turtles at my house that we could use in the 4-H exhibit, we chose to let this one go. We decided to make our way around the front pond a second time, and while we were doing this, we found another bullfrog, but this one was a juvenile.
We got a little bullfrog, you guys.
Should we put it with these ones?
Yeah.
Who was talking to me about the webbing before?
Baby bullfrog.
Because that's one of the other ways too that I could tell right away, especially because he's going to be big. You can tell by the big feet already.
I got big.
This could be interesting. And where did we put the little green frog, you guys?
We didn't get one.
Yeah, we did.
I don't know.
Oh,
Where'd
Christian
you put
had one. Did it end up getting away?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and put this one in there. See how the leopard frogs do with him in there. Could be interesting. Could be very interesting because the little bullfrog might get real big over the next few days. If it was a pickerel frog, did you know the bullfrogs generally won't eat the pickerel frogs? Because they can be poisonous, but the leopard frogs, they'll eat them all. All right, let's roll.
What about Polly?
Oh, Polly, where are you? Now, some of you at home probably caught earlier that Polly's real name is Max. When Max was in an earlier camp session, a few of us decided that he kind of resembled a younger version of Paul Jr. from the Discovery Channel show American Chopper. Since Amy and I were entering a contest where you send in a videotape to try to win an American Chopper fantasy bike, we asked Max's parents if we could borrow him for a part in our tape. They were kind enough to say yes, so Max pretended to be Polly while I pretended to be Paul Sr. for one of our contest entry shots. I bet if you just flipped our show on, probably for a minute you were a little confused and thought you had flipped on American Chopper.
How's that look?
It's good.
Are you looking tough?
He's trying not to smile.
You gotta get a little dirt on your mouth right there.
Okay, so maybe we weren't that convincing, but at least we had a good time imitating the Tuttles. While we were on our way over to the second pond, Taylor made our first and only snake discovery of the day.
That one looks like it's pregnant.
It's a common garter snake. And it feels like it just ate a frog. Yes, it does.
Where? A puppy.
Yeah, we don't want to get it to
Yeah, we don't
throw
want
it up.
him to regurgitate it.
Amy and Taylor were both concerned that this snake might regurgitate its meal, which is something they tend to do when they feel nervous or threatened. They decided for the snake's well-being that it would be best to just go ahead and let it go. Once we got over to the second pond, we searched around for a while and even took some scoops, but unfortunately didn't find anything. We decided that we might be better off searching around a couple of the smaller ponds that sit just outside the Springfield Township Civic Center. Because there are no fish in these ponds, they are great breeding areas for a number of species of frogs. We told the campers they could catch some tadpoles while we were there and try to identify them as long as we made sure to get them back in the water as quick as possible. The species of frog that we were finding the most tadpoles of right now was actually the gray tree frog. These tadpoles have a couple unique characteristics that help to make it easier to identify them. One is that they will usually have at least some red or orange on their tail, and the other is that their mouth will usually be more beak-like or come to more of a point than most other Michigan tadpoles.
You want me to send him back yet?
Yep, go ahead and put him back in the water so he can breathe.
Before we left the Civic Center area that day, we caught and identified quite a few different tadpoles and frogs. We were also fortunate enough to find green frog eggs that had recently been deposited in an ornamental pond that was close to the Civic Center building.
Close to where I am.
When we searched around the pond a little more, we even spotted some American toad tadpoles that were swimming along the bottom. The next day was our last day with this group, and our adventures took us back to Independence Oaks County Park. Although we may have been finding some of the same species of animals that we had found the last time we were here, it didn't necessarily mean that they were going to be behaving the same way.
I know he's not.
Oh!
Oh no!
That was cool.
Yes, it's not.
Well, oh, you know what? It's starting to get a little nervous. Let's let it crawl down here. We let this big water snake go, but not before it had gotten some
No,
pretty
they
good
already
bites
have
into
one.
Taylor's hand.
Ow.
Got me a couple times pretty good.
Man, I like having Taylor around. This is cool.
You don't have to get bit.
Taylor gets, yeah, I didn't get bit today.
Taylor got
I'm
attacked by a
smelling,
snake.
I didn't get bit.
Huh? It pinches when they
Yeah, I was
bite.
just
Now
saying,
it's fine.
that one was a good bite too.
I know. Right here.
When do you bite you? When you pull them out of the hole?
Ow.
He was biting me the whole
The
time.
whole time.
Here's a good question for you guys. Should we just act like, oh, no big deal, he got bit?
No.
What should we probably do?
Wash my hands.
Wash it and treat it for an infection, because there's
They
a
have
risk of
rabies.
infection. Well, there's a risk of infection. Your dog bites you, you're going to clean it up, right? Even if it's a little nip or a cat or anything bites you, you clean it up, right?
Not too long after Taylor had gotten his hands cleaned up, we were back at it again, chasing a younger northern water snake. This snake was definitely more relaxed, which gave me a chance to hold it and talk about it for a little while.
I'm just trying to get it more not to spray me, because you guys know how bad that Taylor smells right now, and these guys have been through many camps where they've smelled how bad I smell. And I really don't want to smell that bad today because I have to go somewhere after. So I was hoping this one would be relaxed and not spray. What is the spray? Do you guys remember what the stuff is that comes out of the vent? It's a mix of what? Urine, feces, and a chemical they produce, a musky odor chemical they produce. Now, you guys probably noticed too, the head's pretty small, right? Just like a garter snake head. They're actually, I mean, the northern water snake is part of the water snake family. It's not part of the garter snake, but it's still, they're all still part of what's called the typical snake family. And all the typical snakes in Michigan have a smaller head like that. The Massasauga has a big, wide head. The head is much wider than the neck. The head on this size one would be like that big compared to that. So it would be real obvious if we saw the head that, you know, it's a venomous snake.
Since the snake wasn't being very aggressive, I thought it would be a great opportunity to let the campers get up close and personal with it.
Now it just senses that, see, it's picking up the chemicals off each of you.
Doesn't like your Michigan hat.
Yeah? That'd be funny if it started biting at the hat. I
Rawr.
like Michigan.
He's a state fan.
After we let Sparty the water snake go, we started making our way towards the back of the park. On our way, we found a few different common garter snakes, including one that was just over 3 feet long.
I thought it was a stick.
That's what I thought too.
A log.
And I was looking, I was like, wait, is it moving? And I started running, and I was
Yeah,
like,
he's
wait.
standing there talking to me. Next thing he's running away. I'm like, what is he doing?
You scared him.
Once we were done checking out this big common garter snake for a while, we continued to make our way over to Salamander Hill. Along the way, we worked on coming up with some Team Reptile rap songs to keep ourselves entertained. I rode the horse and the horse was flying. That made me the horse fly guy. Then we rode the horse on the road and came back and caught a toad. Since this was the last day of the last Team Reptile camp for 2005, we wanted to do something special to end it. We decided to take the group up the higher hills behind Salamander Hill, a place where no other Team Reptile camp had explored before.
We claim this Team Reptile Mountain. This has been claimed on behalf of the United States of America, Michigan, and Oakland County, as well as Team Reptile Incorporated, as Team Reptile Mountain at Independence Oaks. All those other who come up and try to claim it as something else will be sued. All right, on three, ready? 1, 2, 3. Team Reptile!
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again on Team Reptile Adventures.